understand how it's time for new seasonal knitting plans. Like, spring has just barely started happening here. I got barely nothing knit. Like, I'm not ready. Hi, hello, my name is Allie. I'm an independent graphic designer and writer coming to you from just outside Toronto, and this is my channel where I talk about what I'm knitting, how it's going, and what it's costing me. And today we are talking summer knitting plans, and I'm having to try really hard to remind myself to say summer knitting plans. I keep like involuntarily saying spring because I think it just doesn't feel like we could possibly be on to summer. Like, we have just been having such a slow ramp up out of winter and into warm temperatures that I'm like, it cannot possibly be time for this. But here we are. So if at any point I say spring and you're like, I think you mean summer, you are correct. And we're just gonna do our best. As for my mug and tea of the day, this is my mug from Yuk Young Yang Ceramics, and out of it I am just drinking Twinings Earl Grey. We're taking it super chill today. And I am wearing a new finished object that might look familiar to you if you've been watching. And we're gonna circle back to this later in the video, but in the meantime, am I so thrilled that this is actually done? Yes, yes, just know that the answer is yes. All right, so like always, we're gonna start off these summer knitting plans with a recap of how the previous season went. So as far as spring knitting plans, out of my honorable mentions, these are the ones where this was never even really a concrete plan. This was more of a pipe dream, more of a, if something goes off the rails and I need to detour, maybe I'll do something like that. As usual, none of those graduated. So looking at the actual concrete plans that I had on the list for this spring, I wanted to knit my storm sweater. I have the yarn for this. I've been planning to knit this for a while. Did this happen? No, no, it did not. I also wanted to knit a pair of fingerless gloves. Did this happen? No. This was one where there was sort of a brief window where it would have made sense for me to work on them, and I was otherwise occupied. And then that window ended, and now I'm like, why would I knit fingerless gloves right now? That can wait till the fall. So that one's a no. Knit Fix Marathon, check. I did a whole video about fixing a whole bunch of my knits. So this was kind of a big thing on my list that encompassed a lot of other smaller things, and I feel good to have gotten this one done. Then a big item on my spring knitting plans was finishing my Book Club Cardigan, which, as you can see, is a check. Surprise! I feel like last time that I showed an update on this, it was not particularly close to done. So I squeaked this in just under the wire. Let me tell you, I've been so motivated to try to get this done before filming this video, because I just wanted a clean slate going into summer knitting. I just wanted to have it finished and feel like I can move on unencumbered, because this has now appeared in so many seasonal knitting plans. I don't even want to think about it. So I was like, okay, is there any way I can get this done? And it was looking doable, and then it wasn't looking doable, and then I rearranged my filming schedule. I'm filming at an awkward time to make it possible. So we made it, just barely by the skin of our teeth. Check. And then lastly, on my concrete seasonal knitting plans list, I wanted to knit a Musselburgh for my friend Amy, and surprise, check. I have a whole bonus finished object to show you that you've never seen any trace of on the channel. So that we will circle back to later at the same time as we get back to this. And I feel really good for having squeaked this one in, also because before that, like, that and the cardigan were finished within like a week of each other. It was a wild week. And before that I was like, I have done nothing. This, like, what have I been doing all spring? And the answer was knitting this a lot for a really long time. And it was just this weird feeling of like, where is the momentum? Like, just having nothing finished was just feeling like, did spring even happen? So very pleased to have gotten both of those done in the nick of time to have something to show for myself for this spring. I knit a lot this spring. It feels very deceptive to look at what I actually got knit versus the amount of time I spent knitting, because this is just such a more time-consuming project than what I'm used to working on. But this is a summer knitting plans video, so that stuff can wait till the end. And for now, let's dive into my list of summer projects that I want to work on this year. So as usual, we're going to start out with some honorable mentions. Things that I'm almost definitely not going to knit these, but I did think about it. They did make it into my little Ravelry bundle of things I would like to knit this summer, and then, you know, turns out there's only so much time in a season. So almost certainly I will knit none of these, but I did think about it. So first up on this list is one that I think has been an honorable mention before. This one's probably going to continue to float around, but I have been sucked into the idea of Fish Girl Summer. This is what, like the third or fourth year of Fish Girl Summer, still somehow going strong, and I am tempted by the King Salmon Light by Caitlin Hunter. Specifically the lightweight version I think appeals to me more. I just feel like I could use more lightweight long sleeve knits. I've got a lot of sweaters at this point, so I'm trying to convince myself to diversify. And especially if we're doing Fish Girl Summer, something that's lighter weight, feels a little bit more flexible. This would be a top that I could wear more of the time. And I also have to blame my friend Audrey from Fire and Fiber for this, because she recently knit a neon version of this, and that just appeals to me on a whole other level than the neutral version that's shown in the pattern photos. So that really kind of got the gears turning on this one again, returning. And now I'm really thinking about it. So this is a fingering weight pattern by Caitlin Hunter. This one is a little bit hard to give you a range of sizes that it fits because the recommended positive ease is a huge range. It's 3 to 14 inches. So I'm just gonna give you the finished garment range and do it that way you will, but that range is 36 to 72 inches. This is a top-down circular yoke construction pattern and it costs $9 US. Another honorable mention for me is the Knitty Committee top by Lily Kate France. I have really been wanting to knit a Lily Kate France pattern for a long time, basically ever since Lauren and I did our fade collab together. Her pattern that she was using for her fade was a Lily Kate France pattern, and she just had such a wonderful time with it. It just seemed so well written and thoughtful, all the design and fit details. I really want to knit something of hers. And this pattern, this like really fitted tee style, like it has bust darts, it has waist shaping. I don't need bust darts, but just the level of attention that goes into this kind of fit, like this feels like the exact thing that is what she is known for, that is what she's so good at. So I really want to try this out. I feel like the idea of a very just like classic basic knit tee sounds like a nice thing to have. I think that also that is what has contributed to this floating around in my favorites for a while, because it's just, sometimes things that are classic, they kind of lack the like urgency to do them at any particular time because it's a classic. Like I will always like the idea of knitting this probably. So it's like, well, why now? There's other things that have caught my, like, ooh, shiny, right? We can only knit so much so fast. So this one kind of keeps getting bumped, but it's so cute. Look at it. So this is also a fingering weight pattern, and it's designed to fit busts measuring between 28 and 62 inches. It's constructed top down in the round with set-in sleeves, which would be a little bit different. That's not something that I'm doing a whole lot, and this pattern costs £7.50. Another honorable mention, and this one I really thought that this was going to be a concrete summer plan, and it's just gotten, there's just too many things I want to make. But I really want to make this one. I just don't think it's going to make it to the top of the list quite this summer. This is one though that I feel like if I do go off book, I could see it happening with this one. This is a pattern by Emma Yeager, who, if you are at all familiar with the Jeopardy Heartless top thing, that's her. A Jeopardy contestant wore her design on Jeopardy. It went viral. It has allowed her to move into being a full-time knitwear designer now. It's so cool. I'm so happy for her. And this pattern's gorgeous and I really want to make it. And why is this not one of my concrete plans? Because there's too many things I want to make, but it's so beautiful. This is also a finger weight pattern. Summer, I guess, that tracks. This is designed to fit busts measuring between 26 and 62 inches. And just to deter me a little bit, it is knit bottom up in the round, which I'm always a little bit about, but with a construction like this, I could see maybe hiding like a provisional cast on kind of under the bust so that I then knit the body after that to know that it's at the right length that I want. I don't know, TBD, but this pattern costs $9.50 US. Oh, my mug feels really heavy today. I don't know why. I'm gonna put that down. Copper has chosen not to be on camera in his spot today, but he is laying just over here in my sight and he's snoring a tiny bit. So if you can hear him, that is what that is. Another honorable mention, the Palm Springs tank by Leslie Forrester. This one was on my list last summer, and based on the fact that it's an honorable mention, probably gonna be on my list again next summer. But again, this falls into the problem of the Knitty Committee top. Like, it's just such a perfect staple that I could kind of do anytime, so we will see. But this is a fingering weight pattern also, designed to accommodate busts measuring from 29 to 70 inches. It's knit top down in the round, though I mean I assume you do like the straps flat first, and it costs $10 US. I've only knit one tank top, specifically this like racerback cut, and I really like my Sailor Swift, except that the armholes are just too tight, so this would kind of be like a redo for me, and I think I would want to do it in a solid color, and I Part of the problem is that I can imagine this being in so many different colors and loving it in all of them. So picking one will be the challenge of this one. I feel like often when there's a pattern that I want to make, I kind of have a clear vision of what color I feel like that thing should be. And this is just not one where that's the case. It's a little too open. So that's something I will need to figure out, but probably not this summer. And then my last honorable mention is another Lily Kate France. She is forever like in the honorable mentions, just fighting to make it into the actual list. She's always in my honorable mentions. How have I never knit anything? But I'm now looking at the Cardigan sweater by Lily Kate France. This is a worsted weight pattern, so real detour from all the finger weight we've been looking at. This pattern accommodates bust measuring from 28 to 62 inches. The pattern costs £7.50, and this is another bottom up one, which is another challenge for me. My trust is just simply not usually that strong, but this is such a unique design. I love the square neck. I love the big sleeves. It feels so different than everything else in my favorites list. And this is one that I do really think quite certainly that this is going to end up in my knit wardrobe at some point. It is, again, just a question of when, because it is what, say it with me, a very classic look. Like, this doesn't feel timely or trendy. It just feels like something you could wear at basically any time in the last 100 years and no one would really think much about it, in like a good way, you know? Someday, the Cardigan sweater, not today. Which brings us now to what I do actually plan in a more concrete way, though these tend to be ambitious. So I concretely would like to, I concretely intend to try, we'll see how far I get, to knit the following. So I have a couple of these are things that if you have watched my videos before, you have heard about these several times. So we're gonna kind of speed run the first couple because these are mostly old news. Thing number one, the storm sweater. It's still here, it's still on the list. Is it a summery project? No. However, I have the yarn and I want to use it and I want to make the sweater. And I just think that it will be fun and satisfying, as I've heard that it's sort of a quick, like addictive feeling project to work on, which will be nice after working on something that's very elaborate and time consuming and takes a very long time to get a very small amount done. So I really want to do that still. This is a pattern by Petite Knit. It's designed to accommodate bust measuring 28.25 to 61.75 inches. And this pattern costs 50 Danish kroner or about $10 Canadian. And this one, I want to knit this really oversized. I'm planning to knit, I think, like the second largest or the largest size in the pattern, because I just have got a couple of sweaters recently that were way larger than I would usually buy. Only sizes left in the two sweaters that I loved were unisex size large and extra large. And I really loved them. And I was like, okay, well, you know, like it'll probably be like cozy and nice. And now like I wear them constantly, and I actually am finding myself having to remind myself to wear my knit sweaters because I just love how these sweaters that are really big on me feel to wear. And so I want to knit something like that. So I want to knit this in one of the larger sizes, and I think that I have enough yarn for that. Hopefully I have enough yarn for that. Because like I said, I do already have my yarn. I have 7 skeins of the Sonder Yarn Co. Sunday Morning DK. This is in the colorway Dream State. This is a 75% BFL, 25% Masham base. It's this really gorgeous, like dark tealy color, and I just am so excited to have it in a sweater and to actually finally use this because I got this on sale on Valentine's Day. So because of that sale, I got the 7 skeins for $251.70. The sale saved me $36.26, pretty good. So all in between the pattern cost and the yarn cost, that puts my current project cost at $263 for this sweater. And because of that, I've already spent that money. I would like this sooner than later to turn into a sweater, preferably one that is big enough that I feel like I'm swimming in it, and I will love it. Other one to speed run is the Cat Cowl by Brianna Arlene. I already have yarn for this as well, which you've already seen before. Again, if you've been watching, this is from Ginger Twist Studio in their Midnight Tinkerbell colorway that I got from my friend Amy in a D-stash, and I'm going to combine it with the Santa's Garden Sunday Petite Knit color 5012 in the cutest cat-themed colorwork for one of my friends. I think this one is going to be so much fun. I'm planning to cast this on probably before the storm sweater is what I'm currently thinking, but I do have one more plan that I want to do first before either of those. So, you know, I reserve the right to decide what I want to knit next based on how I feel after that. but I haven't done stranded color work in a while, and I'm really excited about this. And I think these colors are just gonna be so fun together, and these are not colors I would wear, so it's just novel to get to knit with them. So this is a sport weight pattern. I'll be knitting this at fingering weight, so I'll be adjusting things a little bit. This pattern costs $8 US, or about $11 Canadian. And this I got from Galt House of Yarn. I have 2, 3, I don't even remember at this point how many I have of these, but well, it cost me $19.78, $3.50 of which was shipping. So that must mean that I bought 2 of them. So that means that my total project cost between the pattern and the yarn is about $30 Canadian, because this again was free from a D-stash. I also have a little bit more of this in a ball somewhere. So yeah, Cat Cowl by Brianna Arlene coming hopefully this summer, because like I said, I finished Amy's Musselburgh, and I'm planning to do like a trio of friend gifts that I'm going to give sort of together at the same time, because it's all for one friend group. So now that I've got one done, I kind of feel like, okay, I want to get all of them done so that I can bestow upon them my creations. Editing Alley. So I actually got the nicest email from the designer of this pattern from Brianna Arlene, offering to send me a copy, which is so nice. She was excited that I was interested in knitting it. And on the one hand, that's so lovely and that's so exciting to get a pattern for free. On the other hand, I love supporting designers, and that's important to me. So I've decided that I am gonna pay that kindness forward. So she has gifted me a copy, but I would like to purchase a copy to gift to one of you in like a giveaway kind of format. So if you're interested in knitting the cat cowl along with me, just leave a comment down below with the yarn ball emoji to let me know that you're interested in being part of the giveaway. And if you're comfortable putting your Ravelry name in your comment, that will make it easier and faster for me to send you the pattern if you are the winner. But if not, that's totally okay. And I will put out a call in the next video highlighting the comment that won. So you just have to pay attention for the next video to see if it's you. So if you're interested in getting a copy of the cat cowl pattern by Brianna Arlene, just leave a comment down below with the yarn ball emoji to let me know. So speaking of the project that I'm actually intending to cast on before either one of those, I want to knit another Kilometer Scarf. So I knit one of these in the fall, winter I think, and it looked like a thneed. It was also so much fun to knit. It was just like my brain just got to go on vacation. And like, I love a challenging knit project, but I like to sort of balance and go back and forth. And that project was exactly what I needed. And let me tell you, after knitting this cardigan, that is by far the most like elaborate, painstaking sort of thing I've ever knit, I'm so ready for a vacation for my knitting brain. So we're knitting another Kilometer Scarf. So the Kilometer Scarf is a free pattern by Florence Miller. It's a DK weight pattern, but it's very easy to adapt this for different gauges. It's a very simple pattern. This is why it's free. But what I love about it is that the scarf is knit in the round. So you're knitting your scarf as a tube and then you're just stitching the end shut. So it's so satisfying to work because you're not knitting back and forth in rows. You just get to keep knitting in the round, spiraling into infinity. It's just the right length to fit on my needles with their shortest cord and work comfortably. No magic loop, no shuffling stitches around. It's just so seamless and I love it so much. But the thing that I'm most excited about in knitting the second version is what I'm knitting it out of. This is not a self-striping yarn. Don't get it confused. This is from the Blue Brick, who specialize in gradient yarns. And when I say gradient, I mean levels of perfection in gradiated color that I previously did not think possible before I saw their stuff. So I first became aware of them in the fall when I went to Woolstock Fiber Festival, and they had a booth there. I didn't buy anything that day, but I just sort of was like mind blown by the concept, and so I very much had them in mind thinking about future projects. And when they launched the pre-order for their Pride collection and I saw their rainbow gradient, which I'll pop up a picture of what this looks like knitted up. There's something so fun to me about this full, like complete rainbow in the most vibrant colors, but with this softening that you get by having it be a gradient instead of the stripes. I just think it's so gorgeous. I think it would be so fun to knit. And it is the perfect thing for my third friend gift knit that I'm going to be working on this summer. So this Kilometer Scarf is not going to stay with me. It's going to be gifted away, but I'm going to have the absolute best time knitting it because it's just going to be so fun. Like, I think that in the same way that stripes tend to be really fun to knit, they're very sort of like potato chippy. You keep wanting to knit another stripe. I feel like there's going to be something very dangerously obsessive to me about wanting to knit the next round and just see how the color is shifting like incrementally in each round from the one before it to the next. And it's just, I cannot even tell you how excited I am for this. And also, part of the time that I'm working on this project, I am going to be away. So I just think that a project that's very mindless, very simple, it's easy to pick up and put down and take with you and whatever, I think this is going to be so perfect for that. So to tell you a little bit more about the yarn, this is their Rideau Sport Base, which is 100% superfine merino. And one of the cool things, he's decided to grace us now. One of the really cool things about the Blue Brick, because their stuff is gradients, they actually offer their various bases in a pretty wide variety of yardages. Because if you think about it, like say this only came in one length and I just happen to need like 3/4 of the yardage in the ball, we do that all the time for patterns, right? Like, I need 5.5 balls for this and I only use half of that last ball. If I were only using 75% of this, I would miss out on colors in the gradient, in the rainbow in this case. So the really cool thing about them is that they offer all these different lengths so that you can look at the yardage that you need for your project and order your yardage accordingly. And then when the yarn is made, the gradient gets spread out across the length that you are using. So if you're knitting socks out of it, that gradient's going to happen in a much shorter length, right? Than if you're looking at this, which in this case is 1,200 yards. This is their beast mode size cake. And the other thing that I'm really excited about this, I will get to knit all 1,200 yards of this into a scarf and not have a bunch of ends to weave in when I'm done. So that's a sweet bonus. The only thing is that this is a sport weight. The pattern is written to be DK, so I am going to be modifying the stitch count a little bit, but I think I had a couple of thoughts with that. I don't think they actually had a DK base that wasn't in part nylon or something like that. I don't remember exactly. There wasn't exactly what I would have wanted in DK, I don't think. And also, I was also feeling like it might just be a lot because the particular recipient of this gift lives in Vancouver and it just doesn't get that cold in Vancouver. So I thought that a scarf that was sport weight, particularly because it is double thick, right, because it's knit as a tube, I thought that one that was sport weight would be a little bit more appropriate for the climate and, it'll keep me busy for a bit longer. In terms of pricing, this was $151.08 Canadian, and like I said, the pattern's free, so that's my total project cost is $151.08 Canadian. Now, the last thing in my concrete summer knitting plans list, realistically, should this be in my concrete plans section? I don't know how I could possibly fit this into this season, but I am so obsessed with it that like the likelihood of me going rogue and throwing this in at some weird point in the timeline, or just, I don't know, knitting like a madwoman so I can do it all. I don't know. Can she have it all? Anyway, recent pattern design launch, the groundbreaking sweater by Clara Cecilia. The algorithm came for me. It popped up on my Instagram feed when it was just a yoke, when she was just beginning to develop this pattern. I watched it appear on my Instagram timeline week after week, growing, becoming a pattern, her saying, it'll be soon, I don't know yet, but soon, and okay, it's gonna be next week. And I followed this from its infancy, just absolutely in love, because I love tulips. They are my favorite flower. And when I tell you that I have scoured Ravelry, scoured for tulip patterns, and have simply never found one that I really loved. And that was sad to me. And here it is. It's arrived. It's here. She made it for me. And now I have to knit it, and the question is when. The question is how. But I do really want to make it. I feel like this would be such a good use case for a neon and neutrals combo color palette. I can see it. I have a loose plan of what yarn I would want to do. I'm picturing like a neon coral kind of situation for the tulips with like a warm gray. It's gonna be so good. Why can't I knit all the things? Like, why don't I have time to knit everything? This is another piece of stranded color work, also, by the way. So is this the season where I knit 2 pieces of stranded color work? I haven't knit one since last year when I knit my first one and was obsessed, but to the point where like it took over my whole life. So it's like, whoa, need to be careful with that. So 2 in 1 season could be dangerous, but at least it's the season of like, many a cottage weekend and things like that. So maybe it'll happen. Again, weird time of year to knit this sweater. I don't know. I just know that I really am obsessed with this. to actually give you the details of this pattern. This is a sportway pattern and it's designed to accommodate busts measuring from 28 to 61 inches. It's knit top down in the round as a circular yoke construction with 2-color shaded colorwork. What's happening? Okay, my phone just decided to overheat itself and shut down. So where was I? This pattern costs 80 Swedish krona or about $12 Canadian. And I'm torn because I kind of want to jump on this while it's like fresh and seasonal, but I also am like, there's all of these projects that I already have in my queue that I have yarn for and that I'm excited to make, that I really want to make. And like, do I want to let this like jump the queue and keep pushing those? Like, do I want my every seasonal knitting plans to be the same things that I keep bumping for other things? Like, I kind of want to just clear the decks and then jump into something new. But on the other hand, tulips. My tulips didn't come up in my garden this year. This would have been the 4th year, and I think the bulbs are just tapped out. Just none of them came back, and I'm really sad about it. And maybe I need to make myself a different kind of tulip. So that is it for my seasonal knitting plans. That is what I'm planning to knit this summer. And now we have some finished objects to circle back and talk about. So first up is the Musselburgh that I knit for my friend Amy. She comes up on the channel frequently for reasons like destashing her yarn to me because she is also a knitter. And I asked her, hey, if I were to gift knit something for you, is there something that like you would like to have that's knit that you don't actually want to knit? And she came up with a Musselburgh and I was like, fantastic, love a Musselburgh. And what ended up happening, the reason that this like scooted in under the wire, and I'm telling you about it first because I actually finished it before my book club cardigan, because I had a week where I was going to be away from home looking after my niece and nephew, and I kind of had the thought like, you know, it might be nice to kind of bring the hat as like a little capsule project just for this, not really a trip, but like trip away from home, you know. And it would just be a nice little break for my book club cardigan. I had kind of reached some milestones on it. I had gotten to the end of the sleeves and it was just a matter of finishing the body and then the button band. And I was like, I think I'm ready for a break. And something about going to a different place made it feel like it made more sense to me because I'm not good about going back and forth between projects. So it made it make more sense to me to do that. And I have a finished hat. I was about to hold it up. I feel like Amy, hi, hello. I know you're watching this. Should you be, I feel like you can watch this. I feel like you know exactly what this is going to look like because you told me what pattern you wanted and what you wanted it knit out of and what color it should be. So I don't feel like this should be a surprise. I feel like you're allowed to watch. Don't feel bad. However, if for some reason you don't want to, okay, bye. Thanks. So ta-da, this is Amy's Musselburgh. The Musselburgh is a pattern by Isolde Teague. It has a really broad range of sizes from baby to adult XL. And the pattern costs £6 or about $12 Canadian. It's a really neat hat pattern where you can knit it at basically any gauge you want, and there are charts to help you figure out stitch counts and stuff based on what your gauge is. And it's also cool because, you know what, I got this folded up all nice. I don't want to pull it all out, but you knit it up into this like giant Kinder Egg shape, and then it gets folded up. So the whole hat is double layered, and then the brim is actually quadruple layered. And Amy's is beefy because we decided that what she wanted was for it to be a DK weight fabric, which means that all of the hat is a double layer of DK and a quadruple layer of DK at the brim. So this is a hefty hat, but that is by design because she lives in a very, very cold, wintry place. So hopefully this will serve her well. Now, when Amy and I were looking at the size chart to decide what size I should make, we landed on adult medium. So there's adult medium, adult large, adult extra large. I think I have identified a problem in me knitting Musselburghs where, because the way that the sizing works is that you're starting with the crown and you do your increases. So you kind of have like this circle. And once you have enough fabric to be able to measure something, you're supposed to measure how many stitches are in 1 inch. And then that is what you consult the charts to figure out how many rounds of increases you do to keep making it bigger. And what I found with this, and I think the same thing happened to me when I knit a Musselburgh for my nephew at the end of last year, the way that the stitches fit where the increases are for me, like those stitches just always seem to end up being just a little bit more squashed between the increases than the stitches actually end up being when they're just sort of like free doing their own thing in the rest of the hat. So that meant that the gauge that I was measuring was quite different than the finished gauge of most of the hat, which meant that my adult medium hat ended up larger than the adult extra large, like larger than the largest size. So I had some concerns about that. It it would sit on my head. Like it's not like it was falling down, but it also didn't feel secure. It didn't feel snug in the way that I think that you want a hat to. But also Amy had said to me when we were talking about sizing that she has had success in, this is Santa Scar and Sunday. She has had success with Santa Scar and Sunday in hats where she's been able to machine wash and dry them on the delicate cycle. And even though it's not a super washed yarn, like don't try this at home, that she found that she was able to do that without it felting, and it would just like shrink things like ever so slightly. So she was like, if your gauge is sort of between sizes, like I think you can err on the larger size, and then like we can do that, and that'll like just tighten it up a little bit. So I was like, okay, I think I need to try that. And I think that my washer is maybe slightly different from Amy's, because if we look at this close up, this was on the delicate cycle. I feel like it's less evident actually on camera than in real life, but it has definitely started the felting process. So I didn't actually end up putting this in the dryer at all. I just pulled it out of the washer and ended up drying it laying flat because I just didn't want to risk it felting further. But the good news is it felted to a good fitting circumference, and it doesn't seem to have really lost any length. So it worked out. It's just not quite as crisp in its stitch definition as it once was. What's funny to me though is that despite the fact that it didn't really lose length in doing that, this is just like a shorter Musselburgh than the last one that I knit. And I knit it to the pattern directions of like how long you're supposed to knit after the increases before you start the decreases. But I'm realizing that I think just because this is so beefy, like the many layers of DK, it makes sense that you just, the thicker your fabric is, the more length you actually lose to all the folds, because the measurement that it tells you to knit before you start your decreases is the same on all the gauges. It's not like you knit further on a DK weight than on a light fingering weight. And a light finger weight is just going to use a lot less of its own length to get around a fold, you know what I mean? So I feel like we, like, look how thick the brim is at the bottom. We've lost like an inch of fabric just going around this. I think if I were to knit this again, well, we know I could take some stitches out from the circumference and I would reallocate that yarn to just knit like a couple extra inches, because like it's not gonna be good for my hair, but like it fits on the head, like it covers my ears, everything is fine. It's not that it's like too small, it just doesn't have as much of like the cute little poof as I was expecting it to have. I don't know how much Amy was expecting it to have, so hopefully she likes it. And I mean, even if it's not as cute as she was hoping, it should definitely be as warm as she was hoping, because this is thick. This is a thick boy. You want to know my favorite thing though about this project? I knit it in 4 days. My God, it was absolutely what I needed after having been working on this cardigan for months without having a finished object. It was just like the morale boost that I needed, you know, have a little bit of momentum, because so I cast it on. I got just like the barest bit of the increases done just to sort of have it established where it was like clear what I was doing and I could work on it easily before I left for my sister's. And when I got there, suddenly my niece and nephew are old enough that they like don't need me or want to do anything with me and have their own lives, and I'm just there to like make sure the house doesn't burn down. I had so much more time to myself than I was expecting to, and also than I ever do at home, because I wasn't at home, so I wasn't like going to my yoga classes, I wasn't making plans with my friends because they're not in the area, right? So it just, I had nothing on the calendar and nothing to do but knit. I mean, and work, but like the rest of the day. So I tore through this in 4 days. It was an absolute blast. I watched Love is Blind Poland while I was knitting it. The dub was way better than I was expecting it to be. I've kind of avoided a lot of the Love is Blinds in other languages because I can't knit and read subtitles at the same time, and usually I find the dubs insufferable. I was desperate for content. Again, I had so much time. So I tried it and I was like, huh, this one's pretty good. Anyway, so yeah, Amy, just know that your hat is deeply imbued with Polish romantic drama. Also imbued with merino wool. That's what it's made of, because it's Santa Scar and Sunday in the colorway olive green. I ordered this from Galt House of Yarn, and it is 3 skeins, which cost me $44.07, plus about $4 of shipping was sort of its portion of my order, and adding in the pattern cost, that puts us at a total project cost of about $60 Canadian. And when I say it was 3 balls of yarn, it was exactly 3 balls of yarn. Like, yarn chicken like you would not believe. I truly thought there was no way I was gonna win this, and I was like dismayed to find that it was looking so unpromising, because I had calculated things and I had erred on the side of being safe. This is 3 balls, and so the first ball, you know, it's all of the increases, and then it's a little bit of just straight knitting, and then the second ball is just like all in the middle, that's all knit straight. But so for the third ball, I just measured like, okay, how many rows did I get of straight knitting after I had done my increases? So I took that number, and then I subtracted 3 or 4 to err on the safe side, and then use that as the number of rows that I would knit in the new ball of yarn before I started the decreases, right? Because the start and the end are symmetrical. Made sense to me. And the number of rows that I played it safe by was apparently exactly the correct number to play it safe by, because this is how much yarn I had left at the end. I was working on this going, there's no way. There's literally no way that this is enough yarn, but I can't stop now. Like, I need to know. Like, I feel like I know, but I need to know. Like, I can't rip back until I know for sure that I need to, even if that means I'm gonna have to rip more. Because the further you get at the end of this hat, like, it starts to go so quickly because of the decreases that I was like, it's not a big deal. Again, I did it in 4 days. If I have to rip back, oh no. So I proceeded, and oh my God, could not possibly have been closer. But it is really wild how quickly the decreases make everything smaller and like reduce the amount of yarn that you need, because I had like inches left to go and was like, this is like a tiny itty bitty floof of yarn, like this is a nothing of yarn. But it was actually enough. So this one feels like a small miracle that I didn't have to rip back. And this is Amy's Musselburgh, which is now going to wait until everybody else's presents are done, except that I don't think Amy will mind, because it's not winter right now, so she does not need the warmest hat in the world for a few more months. Now, without further ado, that brings us to my masterpiece, my magnum opus. I have captured Moby Dick. I have slain the great white whale. Can I be more dramatic? I think it deserves drama. I've been working on this forever. It's been almost 3 months since I resumed working on it. I had started it in November and shelved it after a little bit. And as much as also like under 3 months for most, like that's not that wild for a sweater. Usually my sweaters are sort of between 1 and 2 months, but usually closer to 2. So like that's nothing wild, except that I spent so much more time knitting in the last few months on this. Like, I have been working on this so hard, because it's this weird thing where like I do enjoy when I'm sitting there knitting on it. I did really like working on it. But there's this weird tension between the enjoyment of the knitting and just the tiny amount of fabric you'd have done after you sat there for hours. So I just was feeling like I'm enjoying it, but also why do I have nothing to show for it? And so I found myself investing more time in shorter spans than I usually would, just to try to see some progress. And when I would hit a milestone, I was kind of like, okay, finally, full steam ahead to the next milestone. And it's like, every stage of it just took so long, and it was so worth it. So before I get up and show you the full finished thing, let's run the project stats one last time, because you've heard these a bajillion times. This is the Book Club Cardigan by Sari Nordland. This is a worsted weight pattern, but I knitted it at a DK weight. It's designed to accommodate bust measuring from 29.5 to 61 inches, and this pattern costs €8.90 or about $15 Canadian. I knit this out of the Wensley worsted base from La Bien-Aimée in the colorway Coquelicot, so that's the DK weight yarn. That is just the most gorgeous color, and, you know, made me make my life so much harder than it needed to be by knitting an already elaborate, painstaking worsted weight sweater at a smaller gauge. This yarn is a 50% merino, 25% Corriedale, 25% Wensleydale base. So it has this nice sort of like a little bit of rustic charm without being like rustic, you know? Just enough to feel like that came from a sheep. So I bought my 7 skeins of this in their anniversary sale last spring. It's taken a year for it to come to fruition. So at the time, because it was on sale, those 7 skeins cost me $276.30 Canadian, except asterisk that it got hit with duty when it came across the border. So that cost an extra $44.01 for a grand total of $320.31 Canadian, which, ouch. But you know, could have been worse if it weren't on sale. Except that's not it for the total project cost, because since it's a cardigan, I did also have to buy buttons that added another like $11-ish. So our total project cost on this one, yarn, pattern, buttons, we're looking at a total of $346 Canadian. So this is definitely a big ticket item in my knit collection. Good news is it kept me entertained for months. So I could have knit probably 2 or 3 projects in that time that would have added up to costing more than that. And because I was knitting this off gauge, I was knitting on 3.5mm needles, and I knit the size 5 in the pattern, aiming for like around a size 2 or a size 3 in the actual finished dimensions. So without further ado, let me show you this thing. Isn't she perfect? I mean, she's not. There's definitely lots of errors in here if you look closely. That's how you know that something this perfect is indeed handmade. I am so pleased with how this turned out. I feel like I got to a point toward the end of the project where I was like, is this gonna feel worth the time that went into it? Like, do I love this as much anymore as I loved the premise? And I kind of wondered that even as I finished the knitting, got it off the blocking mats. I don't know, like I hope that this is something that I will get wear out of and enjoy commensurate to the effort that went into it. And then I sewed on the buttons and it was transformed. It's perfect. Look at the buttons. They're like a blonde tortoise shell. Ugh, it's just so good. I'm so happy with how the fit of it came out in the end. I was a little bit concerned because, so I had done some mid-project blocks, so I knew how the body was coming out, and the way that it blocked, I don't typically stretch my knits when I'm blocking them. I usually just kind of lay them how they seem to want to lay. And I only stretch them if I'm trying to like really specifically accomplish something. So this I had just laid out when I was doing the mid-project blocks, and I just was feeling like it didn't seem to have the ease that it seemed like it should. Like the drop shoulder comes all the way down to here. So like it does seem like it should be really nice and loose. And it just felt like it was just kind of like sucking in more than that. And then when I finished the actual bottom of it, so that was the last part to be finished and only blocked at the very end, I was concerned that it fit my hips, but with like no ease. It was coming out a lot more fitted. And I was like, I don't know if this is the vibe. I don't know if I'm gonna like this sort of formality level of a cardigan mixed with a fit that is fitted and feels sort of proper. And like what I like about this is the way that sort of proper design is balanced by this sort of like more oversized slouchier fit. So I did take the pins to this one on the blocking mats, and I'm so happy that I did because I feel like this fit is just perfect. It's exactly what I wanted it to be. I added short rows at the back, and listen, if I were a more forward-thinking knitter, I would have knit short rows into the chart. I would have done short rows of this, but you know, I didn't think about that until I was already starting the ribbing. So instead we have a short row of ribbing, which I think is fine. Let me get closer to make sure you can see. I think that's fine. I think it would be better if the ribbing were a consistent size and then this was what sort of arced, and it would be less obvious that there was a short row arcing situation going on. However, again, it's the back, and I think that it's perfectly fine. It did the job, and I think was necessary. I wasn't liking how the lengths of it were looking when I was trying it on. I was just worried about how it was gonna sit on the shoulders and what that would mean as far as whether the back rode up. And as I sort of tried to kind of test out wearing it and okay, how does it wanna sit? It seemed very iffy, and it seemed like there was a really decent chance it was gonna end up riding up in the back. And I feel like this resolved it well. The sleeves are like the absolute perfect length to me. Everything is good. The color is good. The fit is good. Of course, the cables are good. My tiny little pockets that fit absolutely nothing. So good. So useless, but so cute. So that is my Book Club cardigan, a hard-fought victory. And I'm so happy that I stuck with this one. I was like dancing around my house when I had it done and I put it on. I was like, oh my God, it's perfect. It's perfect. Every iota of patience that went into this thing, worth it. Am I so excited to knit something really simple now? Yes. But I'm so happy that I knit this thing. So to walk you through a little bit from where we left off last time, the last time I updated on this, I had just started the sleeves. I had maybe to like here on the sleeve, which considering that the drop shoulder ends here, it was like an inch or two. So I knit a lot more sleeves since then. I will say I knit fewer decreases in the sleeves than the pattern tells you to, and I'm so glad that I stopped decreasing when I did, Because I even ended up having to stretch these sleeves out a bit in blocking because I was feeling like even having done fewer decreases than written, it still seemed quite tight. So I would kind of have that in your head if you're looking at knitting this pattern. Just go with your gut a little on sleeve decreasing. And I also on these decided to knit the cuffs inside out, which is a technique that I tried for the first time when I was doing my knit fix-a-thon. Lauren had been telling me about how she just did this and showing me the photos, and like the before and after was wild. So I knit these inside out. I just, you know, instead of continuing in the round when I was starting my ribbing, I just stopped and turned it as if I were knitting something flat. And then I just, the like little tiny hole that produced from having turned around, and I didn't do any sort of like fancy short turn thing. I just stitched the end of my yarn through that when I was weaving in ends, and it was a total non-issue. And the ribbing is pristine. Like, my ribbing never looks that good. It's so good. It's just a level of polish that is very exciting to me, and I enjoyed it a lot. I was actually a little bit sad when I got to the end of the body and realized that there was no way that I could do my body ribbing the same way because it's knit flat, because it's the body of a cardigan. And I was like, oh. And admittedly, I think that my ribbing knit flat looks better than my ribbing that's knit in the round, not inside out. So it's sort of a happy medium. It's not quite as perfect. Let's see if I can show you. It's not quite as perfect as my sleeve ribbing, but it's not as bad as it would be if it were my regular sleeve, which also, it's not bad. It's never bugged me. I've never been a person who's gone out like seeking methods of improving my ribbing. But when Lauren showed me the difference in hers and said that literally all she did was turn it around, I was like, huh, that seems worth doing. So I did that, and I'm very happy about it. The other funny thing about knitting these sleeves is that when I was working the horseshoe cables, I found myself not infrequently realizing that I had done one or both legs of it backwards, like that the twist was doing a weird squiggle thing instead of what it was supposed to be doing. And I was like, that's funny, because when I was knitting the body, like it's all the same chart, and when I was knitting the body, I really wasn't having this problem. Like, I've been doing these same horseshoes for so long. Why am I suddenly having issues with it? That's so weird. And then I realized, and no one will ever notice this, I don't care about this at all, but it's just interesting to me because it explains it. I did the horseshoes on my sleeve upside down. So if you look at the sleeve, and if you look at the body, see how these ones are like a V, and these ones are like a little pointy uppy arrow. And I think that the way that this happened must just be that sort of the way I had my sweater rotated as I'm picking up for sleeves, because, you know, now you're knitting in like a different direction of the garment and whatever. I think I was just copying what I was seeing in the body without thinking about whether I was looking at the body upside down or right side up. And then just cabling the horseshoe, whatever way. Like, I wasn't thinking of it as first you go front, then you go back. I was just thinking of it as far as what makes it make what shape. And I was making it make the shape of the body that I now realize I was looking at the body upside down relative to the sleeve. So that's why I kept getting it wrong, because sometimes I was doing it in the way that I concluded I needed to for the sleeve for it to match the direction of the body horseshoes I was looking at. But it turns out that's the opposite of the way that I had been doing it on the body. So sometimes that muscle memory was kicking in and I was doing it that way. I had to go back and fix it. I had to fix several of the cables on the sleeves. I was so confused about why I was suddenly having this problem. And then I put it together and I was like, oh. So that's, you know, these are the perils of becoming comfortable with your cable chart and then no longer looking at your cable chart and just going off of what you're trying to accomplish. I mean, peril, I say that like, again, this is so low stakes. I will literally never think about this again. It's so fine. It's just is really funny to me that this weird consequence came out of that. I also was really pleased to find once I finished the sleeves, I had less of the body left to do than I thought. I just felt like I had not done a ton of body yet and I must have a lot left to do, but I ended up finding that it was maybe this much before I had to start ribbing, and it went pretty quickly. I think in part because at that point I was enjoying being done the sleeves, and so I'm just getting to knit on like one long row rather than going back and forth in these small circumferences and knitting sleeves two at a time, as I always do, but you're just still always doing a little bit of fiddling with magic loop and stuff. It's never my favorite. So I was happy to be back on the body. And then pretty quickly got to start on the ribbing, which I was super excited about. And then, like I said, I added short rows into the bottom back. I'll link the tutorial video that first taught me how to do this. I sort of flipped through it quickly just to like refresh on a couple points before doing this. After kind of understanding the basic calculations and principles from that video, it has made it feel much more approachable to me to modify things myself to add short rows. So highly recommend. It's a bit of a like, you have to sit there and watch and like learn some stuff for a while. It's not like a 2-minute tutorial, but it is really useful once you wrap your head around it. It's a great skill to have. Then once I'd finished the ribbing, I had to face the button band. And let me tell you, this was the final boss of an already challenging project. I reached a point where it was like, okay, I think I was like 4 or 5 days out from when I was originally planning to sit down and film this. And I was like, I can knit a button band in 4 or 5 days. No problem. No problem. It's a button band. It's a button band. How hard could it be? I delayed filming twice to work on this button band because it just kept going. I watched an entire season of Married at First Sight in the time that it took me to knit this button band. Those are almost hour-long episodes, and there are 13 of them. Literally, this took me at least 12 hours to knit this button band. I still don't know how, I still don't know why. I was knitting in fear for the first chunk because I have been scarred before by bad pickup rates on button bands and then having to restart them. And this happened to me the worst when I was knitting the Me New cardigan for my sister. And it wasn't really obvious to me that the rate was off until I was so far into it that I even started to question it. And it wasn't until I was done and I put it on and went, oh no. I had to rip it all out and do it again. And so I was really living in fear on this one for that, but it turns out that I nailed it. I got the pickup rate correct from the beginning. And to accomplish that, I did do a little bit of calculating, figuring stuff out, because the pattern has you doing a just 1-to-1, like you pick up every single row all the way up. And that was what the Me New cardigan had also called for. Bit me in the butt. In this case, it did have you, I think, doing it on smaller needles, so there was at least that kind of helping keep it tighter. But I think because this is all textured, there's so many cables and all the moss stitch and everything, because of that, it is just denser than if you're just knitting in plain stockinette or like double knitting. That is effectively just stockinette, just 2 layers of it. So I was fairly confident that if I did a 1-for-1, that this button band was going to end up rippling like the Me New one did. So what I ended up doing was I counted my row gauge from my ribbing, which is not stockinette, but it's 1x1. And I figured if I counted the knit column in measuring gauge, that would probably be pretty accurate as far as what my stockinette row gauge would be. And then I compared that to the row gauge in the rest of this. And I found that the rate was about 7 to 8, like 8 stitches in this equated to 7 stitches in the ribbing on the smaller needles. So I applied that 7 to 8 ratio for my pickup, so I was knitting 7 out of every 8, skipping that 1/8. I also, when I was measuring out where the buttonholes would go, I put the top buttonhole so much lower than it was supposed to be. And so part of this is just because of my like weird gauge stuff. Like my row gauge is way shorter than it's supposed to be for this pattern. And I compensated for my stitch gauge by going up sizes, right? But that doesn't actually fix things for your row gauge. So I knew that this was going to be a thing that I encountered. I think that's also why I found that I needed to put in short rows at the back. I think that that would have been less of an issue if I were knitting on gauge, because the back of this sweater, it does have the sort of trapezoid shape that you start with that does actually account for the shape of your shoulders in the way that when patterns ride up in the back, it's usually because they don't. And I think that it would have made more of a difference if I were knitting it at the correct gauge. So me having to add short rows was probably just a me problem. That me problem also extended to the V-neck. Because my rows are just shorter, it was gonna button like here. And I was like, no, thank you. So I adjusted it because the pattern has you do your top buttonhole basically as soon as you stop increasing at the V-neck. So I think my end of increases is actually somewhere around here. And I was just like, No, and the increases were gradual enough that I was like, I don't think you'll see, like, I don't think you'll notice that it suddenly goes straight before it joins. I think it'll be pretty seamless. I think it's entirely seamless. I don't think anyone would ever look at this and know that I put the button not at the end of the increases. So that I'm very happy with how that worked out. I did find though, when I looked at the pattern photos, even if I had been on gauge, when I looked closely, I noticed, oh, Sari's does just button. Like, not like here where mine was going to be, but kind of like here, like still higher than I would have ever wanted it to be. So that's something to look out for also if you're planning to knit this pattern. Make sure that you are placing your buttonholes where you actually want them to be, not just where the pattern says to measure them out to. And speaking of buttonholes, I did a new buttonhole method this time, which I'm very happy with because, so last time I did a double knit button band with my first ever time doing buttonholes was on my lace cardigan. And for that one, I had heard good things about the Kimmy Munkholm tutorial for the Champagne cardigan, and it makes these nice vertical buttonholes. Great. And I was saying I loved how it turned out. I just like wish it didn't have a billion ends that you have to weave in after because you were cutting the yarn so often. And then I found out, oh, there's another Kimmy Munkholm tutorial for the Champagne cardigan that creates identical looking vertical slit buttonholes where you don't have to break the yarn. And I was like, what? Why is that not the tutorial I was looking at? And I had kind of gotten it into my head. I thought that buttonholes where you didn't have to break the yarn, they tend to use yarn overs, and I kind of thought that that would mean that it made like a sort of circular yarn over-y hole and that I wouldn't like it. Let me show you these buttonholes. These are like identical to the buttonholes that I made in my lace cardigan. Just little vertical slits that basically disappear when they're not in use. Identical. And did not have to weave in like 4 ends per button. So that was a real life upgrade. I will link that in the description. It was very simple to follow. I mean, if you don't speak Danish, I assume. If you don't speak Danish, you will have to put on the English subtitles and read your way through the video. But the subtitles were great. Told me exactly what I needed to do. And I will be following that tutorial forevermore, I think, because they look so good and I didn't have to break the yarn once, and that felt like a miracle. So highly recommend that method. Oh, I also, when I was starting the button band, I had figured, again, because of my gauge being off, that I would have to fiddle a bit to find the right number of stitches for my button band, like for the width of it, because I figured I would need to add some. So in the pattern, I think it's an 8-stitch button band, 16 with the double knitting. So I had first figured I probably need to go like 10, because like my gauge is quite off. I did 10 and it looked huge, and I was like, huh. Okay, ripped back, I did 9. I was like, this still looks huge. So it turns out 8 was the right number, even though my gauge is off. I think just because it's, again, stockinette gauge is just different from cabling, that it just was much closer to Sari's gauge in the stockinette than my cables are. So that was the magic number. It took me 3 tries to find out that I should have just followed the instructions as written. But, you know, sometimes we learn things the hard way. Then my final part of the final boss was today I sewed on the buttons. I finished that button band yesterday, so it was blocking, drying overnight. So today I had to take a break from work to sew on my buttons, and it was more of a break than I would have liked, because why does sewing on buttons take so long for me? Like, I don't know how I spent over an hour on this. It did not like help that I needed to rewatch the tutorial. Roxanne Richardson's tutorial about button shanks is a game changer as far as I'm concerned, and I just needed to refresh myself on how to do it. The whole premise is that if you are used to seeing cardigans where there's a lot of like pulling, like it looks sort of wibbly wobbly, what the problem is that the button is sewn too close to the fabric, and so it's like squishing the top, like this fabric doesn't have anywhere to go, so it gets squished out to the side. And the way you solve that is by creating a shank on your button, meaning you're winding thread around underneath the button to have it stand up from the surface of the fabric.
a lot more than it would if you just put the button there and just stitched it down like normal.
Now, some buttons are designed to have a shank, like a lot of metal buttons will have sort of that little loop on the back that stands it up off the fabric a little, but the buttons that just have holes drilled in the top usually don't. And so doing it with your thread is a way that you can solve that problem, and it's just a particular method of sewing on your buttons that Roxanne Richardson explains incredibly, the way she explains everything. So if that's something that you want to learn to do, highly recommend her tutorial. I will link that also in the description. So all together, we had Kimmy guiding us, we had Roxanne guiding us, we had all of these angels of knitting tutorials bringing us together with a perfect button band and perfect buttons. And it was a trial at the end there, I won't lie. I really, like, for as long as it took and how much commitment it took, I enjoyed the knitting of sort of the stitch pattern of this cardigan. I cannot tell you that I enjoyed the button band. I cannot tell you that. So I am just glad that it is finished. As for my buttons, I think that the Etsy shop that I got these from is now defunct. If it's not, I will link it, but they're just these really pretty blonde tortoiseshell buttons. And it's funny because I showed Lauren a picture of the buttons for this on the cardigan, and she was like, oh my god, I would never have thought to put tortoiseshell on that, but it's so good. And this was so funny to me because I was like, tortoiseshell is just my default. But her saying that made me think, like, okay, like now I can kind of think about and break down what subconsciously went into that design decision that I didn't even like realize I was making. Because her reaction, I think, was coming from a place of like, okay, it's a sweater in a very bright color, and so we probably want the buttons to recede in some way, right? To not be interesting. So maybe they need to be red to blend right in, or maybe a neutral, but just like a solid neutral to not call too much attention. And these, I mean, tortoiseshell is not like simple, right? Like it has this sort of wild variegation going on. But I think what makes that work for me so well in this sweater is the way that I feel like it functions as this sort of like grounding, neutral, and like natural force, like the tortoiseshell of it, the fact that tortoiseshell feels very natural and organic to us. I feel like it just grounds the sweater in this really nice way. This very loud poppy sweater just feels like this like brings it down to earth in a way that I just really like. And I mean, it also might be that I'm just always wearing tortoiseshell because of my glasses. So to me, it's extremely neutral. It's like it's not even there. So that might also be a contributing factor. That's certainly, I think, why I default to it. I just like it. I'm always wearing it. It always goes. But I just thought it was funny that that was her reaction. And it hadn't occurred to me to even do anything else. So there it is. That is my book club cardigan. The saga of the book club cardigan. You could write a long book about this book club cardigan. I can't wait to read cozy books wearing my book club cardigan. Actually, appropriately, today is the very beginning of our first like cycle of discussion about our book club book in my Patreon, which I'm very excited about. So very apropos that this got finished today. I'm just putting that together as we speak. We're just right now having our discussion about crying in H Mart, and the poll for next month's book, it's still open for a few more days until the beginning of June. By the time you see this, it's decided, but right now it's not. But it's looking very much like the next book is going to be The Wedding People by Alison Espach. So if you're interested in joining us in reading that, there is still loads of time to join the Patreon, read the book, get caught up. We do our discussions at the end of the month, like sort of the last week of the month. So would love to have you there if you're interested in joining. Small Patreon plug. And I want to know what your summer knitting plans are. What are you thinking? What do you want to work on? And if you'd like to be here next time, I hope you'll consider subscribing if you haven't already. But if you already have, you're my favorite, and I'll see you next time.